Alright, today we are taking apart a carburetor off of a Toro Workman. This is a 3200 series. Let me show you the machine first. Alright, this is an older model here, Mitsubishi motor. Alright, I already started taking the carburetor apart, and then I decided I was going to do this video. This is a really intimidating carburetor with a lot of moving parts. We're not going to do an exact step-by-step when we take this thing apart. There's just so much going on. But I wanted to explain to you some of the things here. Now, the first thing you're going to need to do is you got your air line here, which is going to hook up like so. Alright, you are going to want to disconnect that, push that out of the way. And then you're going to have two clamps here, which go to your throttle body here. You're going to want to unscrew those, and you'll probably have two bolts right here in the back of this container to slide that out of the way. Now I already have this unbolted, but we're going to try to recap here. Alright, so basically holding that carburetor up, you have a long bolt that goes through this hole in the front, and you have a long bolt on the other side right there. You take them two off, and that'll allow this carburetor to be free. Now you're going to have a lot of lines here. You're going to have two lines running from the back. You're going to need to unplug them from the carburetor. You're going to have this linkage here. Let me try to turn my light on, make this easier. You're going to have this linkage here on the side, which basically goes on this ball right here. Just get yourself a screwdriver, stick it down in there, and pry. That'll pop that right off. Now also in the front, down here, you got coolant lines that run through here. I already disconnected that. You can see the coolant coming out, but that goes under there. You want to pop that off. And then you're going to have another coolant line that runs through the back here. It's going to go to the back of the carburetor. I would do that one last. Once you have all this free and you can lift this up in the air, then you're able to get to this line and get this little clamp off. It was a little bit of a task, but I got to it. Then you got this here. You're going to have to unclip this wire here. Alright, it's right there. You want to press down on this, pop that off. That'll unclip the wire. Let me see if there's anything else I was forgetting here. I think that's pretty much all of the lines there. We got your two fuel lines here. Now when you're pulling these off, just take note of where they go. Take a lot of pictures if you have to. There's a lot of parts involved with this carburetor. But after you disconnect all that, that should pull the carburetor out. Alright. And now that it's on the bench, before you start ripping all this apart and cleaning it, it's a very good idea, if you haven't done these before, to just take some pictures or even take a video, because you can always pause the video if you get confused on how to put a lot of this linkage back together. Alright, so just move your carburetor all around and make sure you get video of everything. So if you got to go back to it, you can pause your video and see where things are supposed to go. Alright, you can see how many parts are involved with this. You got your whole electronic choke, whole choke system located on the side here. Alright, just get good video of everything. You can see there's a lot of screws, a lot of parts on here. And I'm not going to video every part taking it off, but we're going to take off each part and we're going to clean this thing and we're going to put it back together. Now one thing on these carburetors to note, when you're taking these screws off, some of these are going to be very, very tight. Alright, and these screws will strip out from the screwdriver. So what you're going to have to do, what I did on this one back here, I don't know if you can see it, but I got a Dremel and I had to drill, get a real fine blade, and I had to score it all the way across nice and deep so that I could actually get a flathead in there to remove that screw because that Phillips head started stripping out. So if it starts stripping out on you, get a Dremel, score that all the way through, nice and deep, and get yourself a flathead and put it down in there to turn it off. Alright, so we're going to remove this first. Now, definitely take pictures. There's a lot of moving parts when you take these things off, and take them off very careful so you know where they go back. Alright, but we just took the screws out of this. You can see the spring underneath. And this, see, I didn't alter that at all. I kept it in its position. This actually goes on there like that. Alright, that's how that whole mechanism sits on there. So you want to make sure that you video every step. Now, if you're taking this apart, you're probably taking it apart to clean it. So we're going to take some gum cutter here, some carbon choke cleaner, kind of spray it down in there. Alright. Make sure before you start pulling things out, there's nothing else there that's going to come with it, or you're going to lose or be out of place. Alright. Take the spring out of there. Now the next thing you're probably going to do is start blowing air around here. Remember, you bring an air gun up here and start blowing, you're going to blow these pieces away. Take your carburetor somewhere else when you start blowing it out. But make sure you look real close. Sometimes you'll have little balls in there that have to be seated, so little springs, things that you might not even see, and you'll blow them away, and this thing will never run right again. Also, check the underside of things, alright? Make sure you don't have anything in there that's going to blow away or fall out. When you're setting things down, remember, that spring went on there first. Then this went on there just like that. So I like to place it. I know that goes on top of that. And these were the screws that came out of this plate. I still got one in there. Pull that screw out. Set them there. Leave that alone. You want to do one area at a time here, especially if you're not good at these carburetors and you don't know them that well. And now, we've already examined, there's no other pieces that are going to come blowing away. I sprayed some carb cleaner in there. So we're going to go ahead and just get some air, and we're going to shoot it all around in here and under here. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to put that back together before we move on to a different part of the unit. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and replace all this back in there now that I have it cleaned out. Typically what you want to do when you're doing a full carb clean is get the whole thing disassembled and wash it all and then put it back together, because what happens, you can blow dirt from one side of your carburetor, and even though you've already cleaned this, you're really just blowing dirt back through to another area, and with that part being put back together, it's not really getting thoroughly cleaned. If you've already put it back together, it's going to get jammed up in a different part of the carburetor. But again, for the sake of this tutorial, we're just doing this step by step. Just in case there's anybody that has one of these apart and they're having a problem putting it back together. So I'm going to go ahead, we're going to put this back on there, and then we're going to proceed to the next part, and we're going to clean that out. Alright, now we're moving over here. Now we're going to pull this one off. Again, you want to be real careful. There will be another spring under here. You lift up real slow, just so you can see what's under there. There's our spring. Alright, real slow. Look in there. Alright, now you see this little guy right here? Remember, a certain way this goes back on. See it right there? It's going to seat right in that extra hole right there. So you want to take note of that. Alright, we got nothing up there that's going to come out when we blow it with air, and our spring was sitting just like that. That's where you want to take your picture when you're putting it back together, or just go back and watch this video. Alright, so we want to set that on there. We know that that goes there, and then proceed to the next step. Now this gasket is really brittle, depending on how old yours is. Could tear it, so be real careful. I'm gonna need both hands here. I'll be right back. I got it loosened up. Now take note. This little hole right here. That's what seats the gasket on. That's how you know it's on the right way. So you want to slide it off of that. See that? Right there. And that other one up there, again, is where that's going to seat. Alright, so we're going to pull this off. It's going to go just like that on there. We're going to leave that alone. Alright, now we can see in here, again, examine it, make sure there's no other moving parts, nothing that's going to fall out. Alright, pull that guy out of there like that. Make sure there's nothing in the inside when you're removing parts. Remember, turn the light on here. See if we got any crud down in there. Yeah, we got a little bit. Alright, I'm going to spray some gum cutter in here. We'll clean up these guys a little bit, and then we're going to put this part back together. Alright, she's all back together. We're going to move on to the next part. Alright, so started taking the screws off on the bowl here, and just as I was saying before, this one started stripping out. So I'm going to have to get a Dremel, and we're going to have to score a hole through there. Alright, so as you can see, I cut a groove straight across on that screw head because the Phillips head was stripped out. So I took this Dremel here, see how thin my blade is there, my cutting wheel, and I had just enough room to get it in there. And I cut a groove right down the center. Now I can take a flathead and I can seat it right in there, and I'll be able to turn that screw out of there just like that. Voila. Now, got the screws out, and under here is going to be your float. So pull this up nice and careful. Make sure nothing is going to fall out of there. There's our float. Examine underneath. Alright. And you just want to kind of set that down there. Alright. And this is where your float is. And you want to make sure that this isn't stuck. Seems to be working properly. It's got nice spring action there. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and I'm going to clean this out on the inside. Spray some carbon choke in there, get a little bit of air in there. This float comes off really easy. There's a pin right here on the side, you just slide out. See that pin there? You slide that right out and you'll be able to pull that choke right up. Just like this. Alright, there's your pin. And pull the float right up. Pull this needle out of here. See that right over there. See, let's turn the light on here, see how she looks down in there. It's not too bad. Actually looks like this is fairly newer in here. Looks like somebody's been in here before. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and start cleaning this up. So we got the float back together. Now we're on to this last plate here. I just removed the screws. So we're going to lift this up here. Alright, got a gasket on the underside. And doesn't look too bad in there. We're going to go ahead and clean that out. Now we're on to our last part here. We got these two screws out. And there is a spring under here, so I'm gonna have to set the camera down, pull this screw out, and then we'll lift this up. Alright. Set that part down over there. And we got our spring here. Alright. The spring goes underneath of that. And that's how we're going to store it. Just leave it under there. Very gentle pulling these up. I'm going to need both hands for this. Now, you can see this here actually attaches to your mechanism here. So we're not going to pull this all the way out. We just want to get in there just enough, just so we can clean that out. And it's a little bit filthy in there. So I'm not going to pull this all the way out. Just going to spray some gum cutter in there and blow that out. Alright, this is all nice and clean. Remember, our spring goes back in the center there. And we're going to put this guy back on. Make sure you're going right in the center. Alright, I'm going to need both hands to tighten this up. That's it. I pretty much took most of it apart, cleaned it out, examined it. I did not take this choke assembly aside on the part. I mean, just choke apart on the side. It's a little bit more involved here than I'd like. I'm gonna put this back together. I was mostly concerned about the float and stuff, making sure that was okay. But that's pretty much it. It's really simple, time consuming, but just be careful and remember how everything goes and take lots of pictures. And to put it back on, just play the video back to where I showed you how to take it apart. And that'll explain how to put it back together. Hopefully this helps. See you guys next time.